Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. We're pleased to be joined by a couple of folks throughout the program who know John McCain well and whose careers are largely intersected with John McCain's careers. First up today will be Chuck Coughlin, who is the president of HighGround, governmental and public affairs firm here in Phoenix. Did I read you guys have over 100 years experience between all your 150 years experience with all the people on that firm?
I think we're the oldest public affairs government relations firm in the Valley.
I want to show this tweet from John McCain. It was a picture of him up in Sedona. Take a look at this. You know, we know the cancer diagnosis, but when you see this, was he making a statement when he put this out there?
No, I think his family was. I think it's a genuine statement of, hey, I'm not giving up. I'm moving. I'm walking. That's the guy I know. That's the guy we all know. He's not a quitter. His father was not a quitter. His father's father was not a quitter. His mother's not a quitter. He doesn't raise. That's Jack with him, who's not a quitter. You know, they don't raise him weak in the family.
So do you suspect that he will be able to ride out this whole interim time until the next election? Do you think he'll be there a while?
I think...
I know you're not a doctor, but...
I'm not, and only the Lord and he will know that. I think he will do everything he can, John, to animate himself, his passion, as he stated recently, and wants to get the defense budget through, the defense authorization bill. That's a huge deal. He is obviously, with his speech the other day on the floor on the motion to move forward with the health care debate, you know, it was a real poignant moment because he talked about things about his life and his career, but in a very humble way. It was something that I hadn't seen a lot from him, and so I think he may be hitting a stride here, and I hope the Lord gives him an opportunity to continue.
I want to play from the top tape number 3 because this is John McCain on the floor of the Senate after he came back to be there, part of the health care vote. But this was a big moment. Let's listen in. It's about 3 minutes.
In my life. And I'm so grateful to the people of Arizona for the privilege, for the honor of serving here and the opportunities it gives me to play a small role in the history of the country that I love. Our deliberations can still be important and useful, but I think we'd all agree they haven't been overburdened by greatness lately. I voted for the motion to proceed to allow debate to continue and amendments to be offered. I will not vote for this bill as it is today. It's a shell of a bill right now. We all know that.
I think there's more, actually. But Chuck, that's the guy you know. That's the guy we've all watched. He is the lion of the Senate now. I mean, Orrin Hatch has been there longer. But John McCain is the lion of the Senate.
He has. I remember when I was working for Governor Symington and we went back there and his colleagues were literally scared of him. They wouldn't get in the elevator with him because they didn't want to face the wrath of John McCain. It's now the intensity of that passion, but with a humility and a gentler side that people are attracted to. And so, you know, when he pressed himself on the floor and he said, you know, I've been responsible for some of this rancor and takes his own responsibility for that, and his passions get ahead of him. You know, that's a moment that I had not really seen before on a stage like that. I've seen it from him personally, and I know we all know that are close with him. But you know, for him to say that and to lay that place out where people can come together gives me the hope that he will be able to endure and be a rallying point where we can solve some of these bigger problems.
You first got to know him. You were brought in for the Senate run back in '86. He ended up running against Richard Kimball, who was a corporation commissioner at the time. A good-looking guy, had a lot of polish, had some chops, but the opponent you thought you were going to face in that race was Bruce Babbitt, the former governor.
Yes, and so I met him in '84 on the first campaign I ever worked in out of college in Ohio, and brought him to VFW convention in Ohio. And I didn't know we were going to get out of there alive, but because of some of the things he was saying, but they loved him, and I said, I want to work for that guy. I want to be a part of that.
No kidding. That brought you to Arizona.
He was my ticket to Arizona. He still says, when I talk to him, he goes, you're the greatest mistake of my life. I've taken that blow a few times.
Oh yeah, he will really gently and not so gently rip you in fun, but there's
I got to do it to him too when Fife was governor. We did a proclamation on his birthday commemorating the fact that he had graduated, I think last in his class, but still proceeded
third from last,
and has the record for destroying the most jets in the United States Navy, as a member of the U.S., in his career there. So.
This moment that we just watched on the Senate floor, did you take that as a farewell?
No. A
call to arms, a call to action?
Yeah, absolutely. I took that as follow me. Let's do this together. And
do you
I think
there's
that's
a way to do that with health care?
I think there is. I think he said it. I don't think you can do a big government reform package. Obama made the first mistake in running a partisan bill the first time, and now the Republicans are doing the same thing again. You cannot do big government reform and big projects. We couldn't do civil rights without Republicans and Democrats working together.
But we did health care without Republicans
But it was
all.
wrong to do it the first time. I mean, it was not done in a manner of bipartisan cooperation.
So something that big, you've got to have buy-in from both sides.
You have to have buy-in from both sides. My little example out here in the Governor Brewer's expansion of Medicaid restoration, or the Prop 100 vote during the bottom of the recession where she said we have to raise revenue to sustain the state. We were $3 billion in the hole on a $10 billion budget. So, and that took both Democrats and Republicans cooperating together. It's something we don't see a lot today. It's what's a problem in our system today. And I hope, and I know he knows that, he's been around to see those things. And I know many of the senators, that's why the Senate is the Senate, because people get elected for 6 years. He said that in his speech. I don't have to get reelected every 2 years.
Right.
I can look to a longer horizon, a higher North Star.
Let's talk about that a little bit. We're diverging from John McCain to look at some bigger things that he's part of. Why do you suppose we are in this place? Is it gerrymandering of districts? Is it the way congressional districts are set up that creates people not having to compete really for...
The big change
it pushes everybody to their extreme.
The big change was we'd always, since the Civil Rights Act of '64, we'd had districts that were majority-minority districts, which are either safe Republican or safe Democrat. And the introduction of dark money under Citizens United has calcified that system. Because now all these people know is all they need to do is win a Republican or a Democratic primary, and they're in. They're there perpetually. And so there is no incentive. It's our fault. It's the American people's fault for subsidizing a primary system that incentivizes this behavior. Because you don't need to appeal to a general election audience anymore. All you need to do is win your primary if you're a member of the House or a member of the Senate, and you're in.
Okay, so that would be pretty much the districts we have right now. The only competitive ones would be 2 in southern Arizona, where McSally battles for her life every time.
Yes.
1 up in, well, it was 1. Is it still 1 in northern Arizona?
It is still 1. Yeah.
That was Ann Kirkpatrick battling for her life, Andy Biggs now. And, boy, that's about it, right? And Kirsten Sinema, maybe.
But that district, the way it's been drawn, has always voted Democrat. I mean, Obama beat McCain in that district in Arizona in that election cycle.
District.
Yeah. And so that's a Democratic district. So it's really, Gosar's district can go a little bit, but the 2 that are most competitive are, as you said, Martha McSally's district in southeastern Arizona, and the first congressional district, the first congressional district, which is northeastern Arizona, which is Tom O'Halloran right now.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So you've only got 2 out of 8, that are 9.
And that's true of most
2
states.
out of 9.
And that's true of most states. But the point there is that the Citizens United decision which allows undisclosed dark money contributions to influence. They're not used to support the incumbent candidate. Those dark money, in 99% of the cases, maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, 90%, they're used to dissuade opposition. So if you say you want to run against one of these guys that is a pretty entrenched incumbent, and you're not very well known, you're not John Hook, you're maybe Chuck Coughlin or some, just a guy that wants to run or a gal that wants to run, and before you hit the ground, they're going to frame your campaign for you. But that dark money is going to say, this guy, it's going to frame the message for you. So you'll never get a chance to introduce yourself absent
You're boxed in before you get out of the game.
This is
what McCain-Feingold,
it was the beginning of that.
This is, and John McCain was talking about this stuff years ago.
And we've talked to him. I've been in 2 cycles ago in 2016. We were trying to get an open and honest constitutional amendments on the ballot out here. I was working with Paul Johnson and Terry Goddard and a group of other people that people are like, what are you doing with those guys? And I said, well, the system's broken. And it still remains broken. We went and talked to the senator about that. He was very sympathetic. He smiled through the whole thing. I'm praying to God that they keep him around and give him another pass, because I think it's there. I think he knows what's the problem with what is the problem with the system. And I think America at least is frustrated with it, and there are solutions.
One more thing before we go. We've got to take a break. Do you think John McCain, because I mentioned this to him in one of our interviews, I said, I think you're more revered and loved around the country right now than you are in Arizona. He's got a lot of detractors in Arizona. People are on his case. They don't think he's conservative enough. They think he's bent too far to the middle. He was a rock-rib Reagan Republican when he first started.
Yes.
Does he talk about this, think about this? Is he cognizant of it? I mean, when I brought it up to him, he was not happy. He said, look, I've won all my elections and pretty easily. Somebody out there likes me in Arizona.
Yeah. No, he does, but his only threat is from the right and from the hard right. It's the same dysfunction that's going on across our party right now, across the Republican Party right now. But you're right, he's the most revered Republican, senator. He's got you can't go into a Starbucks with him and not anywhere in the world and not know and have people come up and say, you're Senator John McCain. People know him just as, in a different era, with a different scale, they knew Senator Goldwater. I mean, they know who John McCain is. And so he has to navigate the miasma, I think, as he said on the Senate floor, of the screaming blogs and the screaming internet and the screaming talk show radio hosts. And my argument to him is consistently, when we talked last time, when he was running last time, just ignore that. Be who you are. Be who you are, and be the guy that we all, be the guy. I came out here in 1986 to run for him because he talked about the Republican Party as a big tent, which created opportunity. It was that Reagan message of inclusion and cooperation. And we've lost that. We've lost that because the isolationist wing of the party. We've not handled the immigration issue correctly. The Democrats haven't. Nobody's handled that issue correctly. That really is a foreign relations issue as it translates into how we treat Mexico and why are all these people coming here. And
it's an economic issue.
Well, all the people that died in the trucks in San Antonio last week, 8 people died. I mean, they're still coming. And so the question is, as our border, to me, as the 47th state, the last state in on the continental side, who has this massive border, why aren't we talking to Mexico about Mexico as a foreign policy issue? And we see waves of immigrants dying in the Mediterranean. Well, that's been going on here for a long time, but it's not on the front page of the New York Times. And I think John can help.
One quick thing. If there were a replacement needed for John McCain, if he cannot fulfill his duties in the Senate because of his health, who should Doug Ducey appoint?
Well, I would assume if somebody from the McCain family said that they wanted to fulfill that term, that's a no-brainer. If they're eligible, say if it's Cindy wanted to fulfill it, or Andy, or somebody from the McCain.
Let me throw out a name that I've floated out there. A guy who I think could step in temporarily and hit the ground running would be Jon Kyl.
Sure, absolutely, and that would work. Former Governor Symington is close to both of them. He would be good. Former Governor Brewer is close to both of them. That would be somebody who would fit that bill.
Would Grant Woods be in the mix?
No, I don't think so. Just by virtue of his really outspokenness on the Republican side. He's been like me, you know, he's been very vocal and very
But he's very
honest.
close to John McCain.
Oh, I don't know that there's anybody closer in Arizona.
That's why I thought that
Grant.
might be if John McCain said, I
Yeah.
want Grant Woods in that seat.
But you need somebody in the body that can navigate, that can really fulfill John's role. The three we've talked about, Kyle,
Simonton,
Fife, or Jan, would all, I think, fit into that mold.
We wish him well.
Oh my gosh, I pray for him every night. I think it is his family. Bunch of people are calling me, and God's been on his side for a long time. I'm rooting for him to stay on his side.
Chuck, thanks.
Thanks
Chuck
for having me
Coughlin.
on.
And up next, Wes Gullett. He goes a long way back with John McCain. Even the adoption of their daughters goes back where those two, their lives have intersected for a long time. We'll be up with Chuck here in a minute. Pardon me, Wes. Back on Newsmaker Sunday, we're talking about John McCain, kind of the political implications as well as just the health concerns. We wish him well, wish his family well, of course. Wes Gullett is a guy who goes back a long time with John McCain, back to the first Senate run.
Yes.
In 1986, we just spoke to Chuck Coughlin. He came on for that race in 1986 against Richard Kimball,
Right.
who was a corporation commissioner. But Chuck was reminding me that the guy you thought you were going to face in that race was former Governor Bruce Babbitt.
Yeah.
Which
And
would have been a very tough race.
It would have been a bigger race, much more competitive. But I think that the governor saw that McCain had enormous resources and support around. And it was back in the Reagan years, and things were a little different then. The Republicans were pretty popular. It was still a Republican state.
How did you meet him first, and do you remember that meeting?
Yes, I remember we met a couple of times, but I remember specifically a long drive we took up to Globe and had about an hour and a half to actually get to know each other. And when I got done with that car ride to Globe, I was like, I think I'm going to like this guy.
Wow. You know, I had never...
He didn't have the same opinion.
But you still made the cut. I got to tell you, remembering, you know, we're not going to get into eulogies here because John McCain is a fighter, and we know that. But I remember the most angry and upset I ever saw him in his political career. I was working in Tucson when the Keating Five happened.
Yeah.
He said, I don't need this. He told me this. He said, when my integrity is being challenged, he really was upset about it.
Yeah, it was a really hard time. And it was a hard time to go through. I was working for him as his state director then, and was very involved in that whole ordeal. And it was, you know, but I learned a lot. He learned a lot, and his idea about it was, look, I'm just going to talk to people until they're tired of talking about it.
You know what?
Because I didn't do anything wrong.
I remember the press conference where he came out to answer all the questions. There is a lesson in this for other politicians
Absolutely.
who step in it. He stood there and took it all afternoon until literally we had no more questions to ask. I thought, okay, I got to give this guy a lot of credit for standing up there and taking it and saying, look, I'm going to answer it until you guys are finished.
Right.
And we literally had run out of questions. Do you remember that event?
I do. I remember that very well, like it was yesterday.
I'm trying to remember where it was.
That part I don't remember.
I can't either.
But we had, but it was long and arduous. And then it didn't stop there, because we spent 2 years. I remember we were at the Winslow Parade in 1986 for Thanksgiving, and he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to work for a couple years, then we're going to kind of take a couple years off, and then we're going to work really hard. We're not taking off time for John McCain means you only do, 50 meetings a day. So then the Keating thing happened, and he spent 2 years talking to people about it and why he didn't do anything wrong, and trying to get people to understand that, kind of like today, he had to go around the media a little bit to talk directly to people.
Go directly to.
Yeah. And he did, but the veracity he had about that issue was he was right. He didn't do anything wrong. He was the one Republican, so he got tugged along. And he spent a lot of time then after that trying to make it better for other people so they didn't get, so that there was no, that kind of thing couldn't happen.
Do you think that gave rise to stuff like McCain-Feingold?
Well, it helped because his objective was to try and take the money part out of it so that politicians, because it's a visceral reaction that people have, and people to this day still. That's why Trump is popular amongst some people, is because he's independent and he didn't ask for money from lobbyists.
He doesn't need it.
Yeah.
Tell me what you've learned about him given his current diagnosis. What have you learned about him that will help him going forward?
Well, the thing about cancer is my mom and my daughter have both had cancer, and I've been through cancer treatment a lot. And cancer treatment is, you know, it's tough. It's hard on you. But if you're in good shape, you can deal with it. If you have a good, positive attitude, you can deal with it. And you can get through it. And John's got both of those. He's in fabulous shape. And not just for somebody his age, but because he's in fabulous shape, for anybody. He can outwalk either one of us.
Oh, he does, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10 miles at the Capitol every day.
Right.
Running around.
Yeah. And so he's in great shape, and he's got a really positive attitude about beating this thing back.
We're going to take a break here with Wes Gullett, who's a longtime friend of John McCain and associate, and came to Arizona because of him. An Iowa guy ends up in Arizona because of John McCain. Back in a minute on Newsmaker Sunday. Talking about John McCain, obviously the cancer diagnosis, brain cancer, particularly aggressive form of brain cancer. We wish the senator and his family, of course, our best, and our wishes and our prayers are with him. Wes Gullett is a longtime John McCain friend and associate. You guys adopted daughters together.
Yes, we did.
From?
From Bangladesh, Mother Teresa's orphanage in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Cindy was visiting, and she called up one night and said, I'm bringing home 2 girls, and would you be able to take care of one of them?
So that was Bridget.
Bridget is who they kept and took care of, and Cindy wanted to make sure we could take care of Nikki, who's my daughter. And we said yes, but then we had about 5 days to get nursery set up, and she was 10 weeks old at the time. And their birthdays are this week, so Bridget just turned 26, and Nikki's turning 26 on the 31st.
Unbelievable. They are not related in any way.
They're not related, but they were born 10 days apart in the same orphanage, and they are spending Sunday together to celebrate their joint birthdays, so they're still friends.
Congratulations. That's awesome. When we talk about John McCain, and I asked Chuck Coughlin this earlier, if he could not fulfill his duties in the Senate and had to leave prematurely to deal with his health issues, who do you believe the governor might select for that job?
Well, I don't know that there's going to be much time, because I think John's going to survive this for quite some time, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he serves out his term. In case he doesn't, politically, it'd be smart for the governor to put in somebody who's not going to run in that election.
John Kyle.
Well, John Kyle would be a great, I mean...
That's been the one that I have thrown out there on several occasions, that I believe the governor, it would be the perfect fit.
Yeah. And so...
Doesn't need it, doesn't need to run again. Right. He's already done that, been there, done that.
And I think that so the governor putting somebody in who might run again, I think that would make it difficult.
Do you believe Doug Ducey would eventually want that job?
Oh, you know, it's a great job for any politician.
Isn't it the greatest job in Washington, they say?
It's the best job in Washington, besides being president. And it is, but I think being governor is pretty fun, too. I work for both the senator and the governor.
What would you want everyone to know about John McCain right now, as we've learned this news?
Well, I think it's important for people to appreciate that he's a fighter. Everybody knows that he's a tough guy. There's no quit in John McCain. There never has been.
Why is it so important for him to go back to Washington and keep fighting?
Oh, I think it's critically important for the country right now. You've got a person in the White House who's mercurial at best, and the world leaders look to John McCain as a stabilizing influence in the United States.
Thank you. Great to see you,
Good to
Wes.
see you,
Good
too,
to see you.
John.
He's a former TV producer, so he took his time cues perfectly. That will do it for Newsmaker Sunday. Thanks to Wes Gullett, Chuck Coughlin, some insight into John McCain and some other issues. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.